Like the interesting thing about the Codex is that most of the YouTubers I've seen that were playing the game, they weren't reading it anyway. So they have this always this little blink in the codex over the codex button saying that there are some unread messages, and one of the requirements that I had from the players was that I could create a mark all codex entries as read button somewhere in the codex, and I was like, well, just just please read it.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Game Engineering Podcast. Today I'm joined by Sławek Brick, who made Shardpunk, a tactical shooter in the spirit of XCOM that is a little bit less forgiving than Darkest Dungeon. You embark on a journey with 3 characters and automaton, and you need to get through 15 levels to reach the end of the game. There is no base you come back to after each mission because you're actually escaping a city that is overrun by giant rats. So you cannot heal up the characters, so you need to manage their health and their stress level. And the game is quite unforgiving and it's difficult. We discuss a lot about how properly tutorialize such games, how to make which information make accessible and which information should be somewhere hidden but still available to the player, how much of the information should be available to the player, and all of that. We also discuss the realities of making games and interaction with freelance artists that may be good or bad. And Sławek was very open and honest about his journey in making Shardpunk. I love this conversation and I hope you like it too. So maybe paint a little bit of a picture how Shardpunk looks like for any people in the audience that might be not familiar.
Sure. Well, Shardpunk is a turn-based tactical game set in a steampunk world. The direct inspiration of the game is were modern XCOMs and the Darkest Dungeon. The game features turn-based tactical combat and requires player to navigate their team through a city that is collapsing. It's being overrun by these giant rats. Uh, Shardpunk has stress handling mechanics on top, and then there's a shelter phase on top of that, like a wind down phase, like a rest phase between each encounter. Uh, it's The game is using pixel art graphics, um, and yeah, that's probably the best description I could
Yeah.
come up with.
Yeah, so strategical tactical shooter, right? And
Yep.
yeah, I found it very cool to play and understand all the mechanics and then like reason how should I make my move so that it will be effective. How do I, let's say, split the damage between different enemies, where enemies will come out from. Like I think this is very interesting genre. I didn't play XCOM. I need to say that. I only know about XCOM, and I can already ask you about that. XCOM famously rigs the percentages, right? Like it shows 95% of the chance to hit, but it's a little bit higher because there's supposedly players expect 95% chance to hit as pretty much 100%, so you never miss.
Mhm.
What was your take on that?
Um, yeah, I totally agree with this approach. I mean, I remember reading or hearing about it in one of the interviews with Sid Meier, like the you know creator of Civilization series, the founder of Firaxis company, the company that reimagined the modern XComs. That they had the same issues when they were developing Civilization. Like the playtesters would disagree on the hit on the victory percentages, even though they were like 100% mathematically correct. So they had to tweak it to make sure that the player's experience actually like matches their expectations, and that's pretty much what I did in Shardpunk as well. So the game is lying to you constantly about the percentage chances. I can't remember from the top of my head, but I'd say every to hit percentage that is more than 60% is really higher. And also on top of that, if you miss a shot, then there's a hidden cheating mechanic that will make sure that if you miss, it will make sure that the second shot has even bigger percentage to hit, and it stacks up, so that you don't have this unlucky streak of fails, uh,
Okay.
which causes frustration in the end, even though it might be like 100% accurately in terms of the maths or in terms of statistics. uh, you don't want to do that. You need to reduce. I mean, I feel that you need to reduce the player frustration. Uh, at least the one that would cause the player to feel unfairly treated.
Okay.
This kind of frustration.
Okay. Have you found have you found out this during playtesting, or it was more from the get-go?
The percentages and the frustration. I guess that was even before the playtesting, like the major playtesting, because Shardpunk went through lots of different like playtests during its development. I've exposed the game to the world pretty early. Like the first demos were out there. I can't remember now, when, like 2019 maybe even. So it was out on itch.io and everyone could play it. It was like a single mission, and that was only that. And then after we rolled out like the real development and the game was nearly ready, we had like a very like a more official round of playtests, which involved both playtesting done with volunteers from Discord and also playtests done by an entity, by a company which actually does the playtests. I can't remember the name of it, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. So it basically paid for some playtests as well.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Looking at the design, you also have different characters
Hmm.
that roam around the map, and then automatons that have a little bit different function. Uh, how did you maybe let's paint a picture? What is the difference between character and automatons, and how did you come up with the split?
Yeah, the automatons were originally not there. Mm, the player was only controlling a group of human characters, and we've been looking for a way to by we, I mean myself and the publisher, like a person from the publisher's side that I was, who I was discussing the game with. We were looking for a way to add some variety to the runs, um, like an extra mutator on top of every run that the player takes. Uh, and yeah, the idea behind the automatons was that they will make you or allow you to play the game slightly differently. Like the support automaton will make you worry far less about reloading your weapons or purchasing weapon core extensions, which are tightly related to the reloads. Like the combat automaton is obviously a damage dealer, so it helps you along the way. And the healing one, well, like yeah, it heals you. So that's that. Uh,
But the idea is that if you lose the automaton during the run, you lose the run. So you need to. It's like an escort mission with abilities and skills and fun.
yes, that's something that somehow evolved from the original idea of the automaton. Because the biggest I won't say disadvantage or a flaw, but like the biggest problem with this approach was that in Shardpunk you don't have any base, like a home base that you can return to after every mission. So you basically just assemble your team and you go. Um, and you bring the automaton along. Uh, but the automatons, like in terms of lore of the game, the automaton is like there's only one instance of it in the world. It's like a prototype unit, which then has been bound by me to the game story that this thing is crucial to be delivered to the final location or whatever. So I basically tied my hands up myself by assuming that there's only one instance of it in the world, and you need to keep it alive. So it evolved into an escort mission, and yeah. Uh,
But generally, escort missions are terrible. And
that's right.
escorting automaton is fun because automaton first of all does things and then the characters do a lot of stuff. So you actually get to play the game while escorting. Like I found it
That's
very nice.
that's right. I remember that I disliked escort missions or escort type games in general, especially when you don't have any direct control over the object, the thing, the person that you are escorting, or if this thing that you're escorting doesn't have any means to defend itself or even to fight back. And here, as you mentioned, we've given the automatons some abilities, so to make sure that it's not easy to lose the automaton. For example, automatons have unlimited number of revivals. Like if it gets down, if it hit points reach zero, there's still a number of turns in which you can revive it. And it doesn't work the same for the characters. Like the characters on the easier difficulties still have some number of revives that can take during every mission, but if they get downed again, they will die, and you lose them for this run. This does not happen for the automatons. On the other hand, the like reviving the automaton requires you to have a specific resource, a specific item, but they can always be found. Like there's a mechanic in the game that if you if your automaton is downed and you don't have any fusion cores, like these are the items that you require that you need to revive them, you have like a 100% chance for the next enemy to drop it. Maybe not 100%, but a very very high chance of the next enemy that you will kill to drop this fusion core that you would need to rescue them. In such way, I was like pretty artificially uh, coming up with a very interesting scenario for the player that they can then make this last turn safe and make sure that they proceed with the game. It's still like finding the fusion core is not enough. You need to like if you kill an enemy that drops the fusion core, you need to reach that fusion core, you need to grab it, then you need to go back to the downed automaton, which is probably near to the enemies that killed it in the first place, and then you need to revive it. So it still requires some player interaction, but you as a game designer give the player the means to actually pull it off. Uh, so yeah, so
Yeah,
that all of this was to make sure that the escort missions are not frustrating. Yeah, the frustration is there again. Yeah, so
it's
you need to avoid it.
interesting that we keep finding back finding back our topic of minimizing frustration in
Yep.
all of the runs. And how did you come up with different sets of abilities for each of the character? Like how do you mentally map what can be done in the game and then assign these like two different characters?
That was that was a not an easy task, I'd say. I have iterated multiple times on how to approach the character types in Shardpunk. I mean, initially there was a time when I thought that the characters will not be unique, but more generic and more expendable, like uh, uh, in XCOM games. You haven't played them, but it's like uh, every character can have a class, and you sometimes, well, it depends. You you in some cases you can choose the class. In some cases the game chooses it for you. But like the appearance and the name of the character is not tied to the skills that they have. It's based on the class, and the class can be different. I've dropped that idea to make sure that I reduce the scope of the game so that I could actually finish the game on time. Uh,
But
and
this was to
Yeah,
reduce, mostly to reduce the scope, or from the
yes,
design perspective, it was also something like not cool, or
it would be cool.
okay.
I hope that when I be doing my second game in the same genre, I would actually make it like class based. So you have different characters which can have different visuals, and it would mean like in my game that this girl with a shotgun uh, always has this kind of, so like she always carries a katana and a shotgun, like this particular character. I would like to expand it and make sure that like the weapons are interchangeable and stuff, and the skills are more of a player's choice than not. But that was too much for me to handle in the first game. Like I didn't want to spend more time on the game. Um, uh, And well, in the end, it was all about iterating and reacting to what the players say. Like I was moving the skills around between different characters. Uh, and I do know that the players like when the characters have a more unique playstyle. There are some character types which are too similar to each other. Like then they don't have the skills that stand out. Um, but for instance, the players like the girl who is of the I'm not sure whether this is the official name, but this is how I call her in code. Like she's the electromancer. Like uh, she's able to teleport and steal life from characters and stuff, uh, which opened up many new interesting tactics because you could just flank the enemies and not worry about getting shot by Overwatch or stuff like that. Uh, and then on the other side of the spectrum, there are characters who are more bland and have skills that do not stand out that much. Uh, there's a one of the players is actually right now creating a list of tires so for every character in Shardpunk, and he's putting them in in the forum that we have on Discord, and this will surely be one of the inputs for me for the next uh, rebalancing thing. Because in the end, it turned out that, well, maybe that's always what's happened, that some characters are stronger than others, and then choosing a certain team makes the game easier or more difficult. But I'm not sure whether you can avoid it at all.
Yeah, but also it's difficult to say in Shardpunk, right? Like because you select characters and then you venture forth, you kind of don't know. Oh, if I were to select the other one, I would have had an easier time doing this. So you kind of need to still. I think people will largely select characters based on the aspect of how cool a character is in terms of the mechanics, right? After they kind of understand how they can play the given character, for example, because like Electromancer is a different one from the katana woman, right?
Mhm.
So so the Electromancer is the most liked one. Is there the least liked character
Um,
that stands out?
it all depends on how you play the game. From what I've seen in the discussions on Discord, there are like two different approaches to how to play the game, whether you should be more aggressive or not. And Probably the harder difficulties encourage the player only to be more aggressive, and in such cases, you tend to prioritize having damage dealers. And even it's not about dealing huge amounts of damage, but uh, having the ability to deliver the damage many times over your turn, because the game tends to throw many small low HP enemies on you instead of a smaller number of bigger HP enemies. Uh, the thing that the strategy of pushing forward is something that mm, players tend to use in the higher difficulties is actually a big success for me, like a personal success, because that was one of the things that I wanted to achieve with the game. Like in the original XCOM, I mean not the old original, but
The new original.
the yeah the reimaginations of XCOM. Like the challenge that I had in the first one was that the players quickly developed the winning strategy, which was turtling with the team. So you don't move large distances. You keep your whole squad together for all the time, and then you'll be able to win on the highest difficulty. And the XCOM designers mentioned that, well, that was not how we assumed that the people will play it. So they tried to fiddle with it. Like, and in the expansion for the first XCOM, they introduced the special canisters on the field, which mm, contained this special resource that you should be using to extend your like upgrade your soldiers. Uh, but the trick was that these canisters would have a timer on them, and you need to reach them in certain number of turns, or they would explode. And the players actually disliked this because it was like the game was then forcing them
Yeah.
to do something against their will. Um, and The second XCOM had something similar. They had mission timers, so you had like 15 turns to finish this mission. And this is something I disliked as well. So one of the first mods that I've installed was it was called realistic timers, I guess. So it I believe increased the number of turns per mission, and also because like the XCOM games has this stealth phase where you could approach silently the enemies, ambush them, and only then the real fight began. Like the timers would be frozen for the time of the ambush. So that was that. And in Shardpunk, I made sure that mm, if you want to stay on the level for longer time, you can, because like the goal of every or almost every level of the game is to reach the next exit, because you're just escaping through the city, so you're always in motion. Uh, and you can take as many turns as you like, but the game it will be throwing more and more stuff at you. So it like the fact that there isn't like a real mission timer, but on the other hand, if you stick around for too long, you will get overrun. And the players do not argue with this. They just come up with strategies that, all right, you need to push through, otherwise you're like dead. Mm, that's something that I like, that it turned out this way.
Okay. So, if you were to assign, like, where exactly have you not made the XCOM mistakes in this? The pushing players to be more aggressive. Because you mentioned like specific design techniques in XCOM where they forced players and it wasn't well received. And Shardpunk, do you have like the specific designs that target this, or is it just overall outcome?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because XCOM was very overt with this. It was very in your face, like this is the timer for the canister with this extra resource, or this is the mission timer. Like if it's if the timer reaches zero, you lose. And it even made sense in like the lore of the game, because like XCOM in the second part of the series, uh, they're running this guerrilla warfare, and that they can't really stay too long during the missions, because enemy reinforcement would appear and they would be destroyed. So that's that. Uh, on the other hand, Sharpunk is not overtly communicating about the fact that uh, there is a timer, because there is no timer. Maybe that's because
The lack of the
yeah.
timer is definitely like it's not in your face, right? But is it in the Shardpunk that like the more you stay, the more rats will eventually spawn? So like can you stay forever in a level? Like or is it just made this way that you will eventually die?
um, the, the biggest difference for sure is that you can try to stay forever. XCOM didn't allow that. Like,
Yeah.
the timer reaches zero, there's a screen, game over, start again. And that was it. In here, you can try staying as long as you like. I remember that, I was tweaking, I am tweaking the game. Uh, so I'm changing the difficulty and balancing stuff out still. Uh, but I remember one of the players was posting some screenshots from one of the missions in which he just decided that he's already bored because he was staying for God knows how many turns on the level, just killing all the rats that were coming at him. Uh, so he just got bored and moved on.
Okay.
So it is possible, or at least it was possible in the previous uh, versions of the game. And what is more interesting is that when you stay longer, you will get to kill more enemies. And if you kill more enemies, there's a bigger chance of, you will be receiving more loot from them because they drop loot. So there's this slight risk reward mechanic there.
Okay. Okay. And also I think we should mention this explicitly that like because Shardpunk doesn't have a base, your health is a resource that you will carry over from one mission to another. So the more if you just let's say end with a character on one health, it will stay on one health for the next mission. So it's not like it will be eventually healed back up, and you need to collect resources and loot during the mission to actually heal the characters and then have more perks during the next mission. So you're stuck between like either staying longer but risking, for example, losing characters, and then moving forward with more loot if you stay longer. And also, apart from the health, there is the dread mechanic. I'd like to ask you, when in the development you realized that it would be a good idea to add another kind of health bar, because it kind of acts like another health bar that you need to maintain for each character. Or was it that health was not enough?
I guess that was like the idea of stress and dread was there from the very beginning. Like the first demos had it, I think, and it was a direct inspiration from the Darkest Dungeon game, where like characters had both their health and their stress meters. Uh, XCOM had it as well, like more in a hidden way, there was not an explicit stress uh, bar present, but the characters could panic as well. So the um, the idea of making characters more human by showing to the player that they have some flaws, they can develop some quirks and things, was something that was a very very amusing feature that I found in the Darkest Dungeon, and that's why I wanted to see how it would work in a game like XCOM, which I loved as well. So I was trying to get the best stuff from two of my most favorite games, like mashing it together and seeing what would come up in the end. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Regarding the abilities and the things you can improve after you have you're done with the level,
Mhm.
how much? First of all, I really like the UI from the because it always showed you, okay, I can see what is my full abilities, what perk I will get if I reach this level of ability here and there, so that I'm always like understanding what I'm getting into if I level up an ability, for example. And this was really cool. And then for each character you needed to do different abilities. How much of the iteration was there to come up with like a proper set of abilities for a given character?
It was an infinite amount of iterations that was required there. But your comment on the UI actually surprised me. I mean, or maybe not. Is that okay? It does provide you with sufficient information for you to make your decisions. On the other hand, I'm not happy on, or maybe I was, like people are evolving. When you look at your previous work and you not cringe, if you don't cringe at least a little bit, it means that you haven't developed. So you always need to look at on your previous work critically. Uh, I would say that I would have to I would like to make the UI more have more chrome, like the content is fine, but the presentation, like maybe add some more visuals to it, because I believe that the UI itself, it is really like raw, really basic. It does provide all the information, but still this might be a turnoff for some of the players that decided not to touch the game, but I'm not sure
I
whether
think
that's
that
them.
if somebody is like very strategically inclined and is there for the numbers and like optimizing stuff, UI might not be the priority for them. So it might have been like a good developmental decision not to spend too much time on the UI there. But I
Yeah.
think it's very informative. This is what I was like trying to get across because I remember some games that if I level up an ability and I see that I will level up more, I have no idea what I will get on the level from 2 to 3. What will be the change, right? Whether
Mhm.
it will stay linear or whether there will be like a ramp up near the end or ramp down. So in Shardpunk, I always knew, okay, with the first ability that I upgrade, I know if I keep upgrading this ability, what I will end up with. Like I know what
Mhm.
I'm getting myself into. I think we can actually discuss this because the first thing in Shardpunk you see is the pop-up saying that this game is difficult and you will die and you will need to start over and be prepared for that. And the game has the tutorial built in and it tries to walk you through the basic abilities and then references the codex that is available in the game so you can look up more
Mhm.
information. How have you found this is very difficult in strategy games that are like heavy? How much of the information do you present to the player? How much do you handhold the player? How much do you want to like relay the information from the get-go? How do you structure the tutorial to pass the information in proper way?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions, a lot of things to discuss, and this stuff is crazy. I mean, the talking about the amount of information that you could be presenting to the player. I remember that I've introduced the codex in the last months before the release, uh, just to make sure that I give more information, more in-depth knowledge of how some of the game mechanics works for the player, because players like it. Um, when you create a game, I believe that you can forget that especially if you're a single developer, you can forget that you know everything about all the mechanics. and then if someone else plays it, and I actually have it when I am playing some games, some demos, some indie demos. I'm playing the demos, and I believe that's exactly how some of the playtesters felt when they were playing Shardpunk before my changes, before adding the codex and stuff like that. I was like, I'm doing something, and I have no idea what happened. And if a player is asking questions like, well, I'm not sure what's happening right now. I guess that is not a good outcome. Like, it depends on the game. Surely there are games where maybe you want to hide more information from the player, but here, uh, like you mentioned about the informative UI. Like, you want to know what kind of actions will be there, what will be the consequences of you choosing this action. Um, uh, and the players love it, or like it in strategy games. On the other hand, hiding some kind of information makes sense as well. Like, um, for instance, we had this case with character quirks. Like, there was a quirk, for example, that was could cause the character to panic if something happens, if they see a certain type of enemy, for instance. And like the first description, like the initial description of this quirk was that this character has 30%. There was like a number in there explicitly, a 30% chance of panicking every time they encounter this enemy. And we had a discussion with the players on Discord, and they were like, you might consider hiding the percentages on that, because it actually makes me like, it causes me to think about this character more of like a machine, and not like a character. Just tell me that this guy has a chance to panic. It like he can panic when he sees these snipers, and I will tell the story myself, that why this is happening. Maybe he had some bad experiences with rat sniper. Obviously, everyone, if you would encounter it, you would have a bad experience. But like, hiding some of the numbers behind would would make the characters more human. And well, that was crazy for me, so I did hit it. On the other hand, I know that some of the players are still complaining that they don't have full information on enemies, uh, and they would like to be able to hover over an enemy type and see exactly how much damage they can cause. Like, because this information is not exposed in any way. They can guess like what's their critical chance percentage, and what are their base damage, and based on that they could evaluate the strategies. And maybe I wouldn't have to expose this information from the get-go. Maybe you can, some games do it in a way that it will gradually expose parts of the information about the enemy after you encounter more of them, or maybe kill more of them, or maybe this is not this kind of game, but I guess XCOM had it, or the other older XCOM games. You need to kill the enemy and then drag their corpse to your ship, and then go back to the base, and then do some kind of research on them, and dissection, dissect them, and then you would get some more information about them, and maybe even some bonuses for killing them, because like, lore wise, now their soft spots, so you know how to handle them. And man, this actually sounds like a great idea for something to include in my second game. So I need to memorize this one.
Write it down. But what would you say for the game, for Shardpunk, to make it concrete, for Shardpunk, what would be the ideal amount of information that is available to the player that wants to play at the highest difficulty? Is it everything? Or, for example, like, because I can imagine that there is a design decision to make whether you want to expose some of that information for the player, or do they need to kind of eyeball it, kind of judge how risky this might be? If I, for example, go straight into a pack of 7 rats and I want to get out, like, is it possible? So what would be the ideal amount of information that you allow, not necessarily in the UI, but generally, like, allow during your turn to take in?
I believe that if we're talking about the highest difficulty possible, the game should expose all the information, because in the end, like, the most hardcore players want to be able to hack the game, and this
That's
is
true.
actually what I guess that's what I was doing with, I don't know, Civilization 5 game, like, which is like a completely different game, but I was playing on the I guess the highest difficulties, and there was only, or at least for me, uh, I was always using the some strategies that I found uh, on the internet that was like about exploiting the AI in some ways, because otherwise wouldn't be possible for the player to win. Like the AI was having so much head start that you as a human being was you had to be creative and make sure that all the little things that you can do to make sure that that you get ahead. And I guess the same could be said here. Like, if you're playing on the highest difficulty, if you're playing Shardpunk on the highest difficulty, you would need to specifically know the hit chances, uh, maybe even the real to hit chances. Not the tweaked ones.
Yeah.
I mean, not the one that I shown, but the tweaked ones, and the exact damage numbers that the enemies can do, because you need to do these cold calculations. And I might be wrong here, but I believe that this is how at least that's how I was playing the other game. But the players that are trying to beat it on the highest possible level, like the levels that are mm, often described as even impossible to be played by regular mortals, you need to expose lots of information. And if you don't, like the players, the most hardcore players will be running tests, and then they will be putting this information on the wiki anyway, and they could be wrong about it. So why not expose it? So that's the
That's true.
idea. Like,
So it seems
uh,
like, do I get this right? It should be proportional to the difficulty that you want to have. Like, because if you want to do the on the highest difficulty, you need all the information. But if you want to kind of do it, for example, Sean Plot, Day 9, who was the StarCraft player, he was recently mentioning that, like, it seems like there's a lot of fun in kind of a quick approximation. Like, you need to do something, you have relatively short window of time, you kind of eyeball it, kind of judge it, do the decision, and go on. Like, not necessarily everybody will coldly calculate all of the percentages, but it seems like it's the more information is required for the more difficulty, and it kind of might be proportional to how hardcore you want to have your experience. Is that right?
yeah, yes, I think so. I think that's how I would approach it. Like, having at least a toggle in the game settings about allowing the player to expose for the game to expose all the information for them might be interesting, but it shouldn't be enabled by default. Like, nobody plays on the hardest difficulty by default. I hope so. uh, and yeah, you don't want the game to spam the player with all the information. Like, the interesting thing about the Codex is that most of the YouTubers I've seen that were playing the game, they weren't reading it anyway. So they have this little blink in the Codex, over the Codex button, saying that there are some unread messages, and one of the requirements that I had from the players was that I could create a mark all Codex entries as read button somewhere in the Codex, and I was like, well, just please read it. I mean, I've spent so much time creating this, and then we had to go through the translation and stuff. And I've even made sure that the codexes, like some of the codex entries, have these small videos, gameplay videos embedded in there. So I had to make sure that the freaking UI actually
Yeah.
is handling these, and it works with the scrolling, because sometimes the text is longer than the screen, and I was spending so much time on the UI part in general that I was like, yeah, just please, could you read this stuff? It's really interesting.
I found myself, I think, coming back to Codex for three things in the first level, but the ones like mechanics that I kind of either not got through for the first time when I was presented with, or I kind of saw something and just wanted to get more information, but I didn't want to Codex to Codex for because of the pop-up, because of the notification. I was there because I wanted to get something, so it was more like, okay, I'm driving this, not like Codex is reaching out to me. So maybe that's why it's like Codex is this kind of safe space for your mind. Like if you didn't if you have not read like a pop-up or a dialogue during the tutorial, kind of you're safe because you have it in Codex and you can come back to it. I think that's a big win.
Yes, that's I'm happy to hear that, because like that's how it should be. Like you mentioned, if you need to refresh some knowledge on a feature or mechanic, do it by looking at the codex. But the game should not be throwing this codex stuff in your face. That was, I guess, one of the first tutorials that I did for Shardpunk in the early days. Uh, I didn't have a codex, but I did have a tutorial, and the tutorial was actually like showing a bunch of pop-ups for the player when they just opened the game, and the players were like, mm, "We don't like it. Like, I just want to just allow me to play the game, and you're forcing me to read through like three pop-ups, like
Yeah.
which cover whole sections of the screen, and I will just go and skip them, and then I will have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
So
but
yeah, that's
that's an
yeah.
important lesson. Like on one hand, I'm the player and I want to know this information, but on the other hand, I just booted up the game and I want to play it. So it's like it's very difficult the task for you, the designer, to lay out this information kind of gradually, but also let me do something and learn by action, not necessarily by like reading walls of texts. By the way, so we could kind of come back to the topic of tutorial. Like
Mhm.
how did you end up with the current version of the tutorial? So like in game with pop-ups.
um, that was just my take of making sure that I, as you mentioned, balance the amount of information that I show to the player with mm, hand holding the player and letting them explore how the game works. Uh, so I'm pretty proud of how the tutorial ended up. Mm, I remember that in one of the first videos, like that emerged right before the release of the game in April last year. Uh, Christopher Odd was playing the game. He created a whole let's play session, and he was praising the tutorial as being, not too overt, like but still explaining all the stuff for the player. I had some things that I needed to explain, like how uh, the weapon heat or ammunition or whatever you call it system works, and the fact that you can mm, perform multiple shoot actions, put multiple attacks per turn for players that were used to how XCOM games handled it. That was different. Like in XCOM games, whenever you perform an attack, it automatically ends your turn. This is not something that was present here, but on the other hand, there's this heat mechanism that is not preventing you from shooting, even if like your weapon is, you could say, out of ammo, but it's not an ammo because it's like reversed. Uh, then there's an inventory management system, like you can swap things. So I just wanted to make sure that there's the part in the tutorial that asks you to move some grenades from one character to another, and only allows you to progress if you do that. Um, so in such way, I had a certainty that a player would know how a thing works. And it's like the total opposite of just displaying a text for the player, explaining something, and assuming that the player will read it instead of just skipping it, because most players would skip it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What what would you say about the tutorial, kind of like a playground where you're like dropped in into the place where you can just freely click on stuff and then have sort of codex available for you to look up the information? Would you say it would be
Yes.
like too much freedom, for example?
Um, it could be too much freedom. Like that's why like the first half of the tutorial mission is restricting the player to do some specific things, and it's more of a uh, directed part of the game. Like I know that the player will be forced to move in this location, and there will always be a single enemy present here, and then there will be this shotgunner who I'm spawning with no uh with a weapon that requires reloading. So I'm not sure that this shotgunner enemy will not be shooting at you at this turn. So that the game tells you about the flanking thing. Then you can flank the enemy, and this enemy has like 100% chance of dropping a stim pack, so that you can learn about using stim packs in the game, and where is the player, like where's the character inventory located, where's the global inventory located, and the stress mechanics comes into play, because when you heal yourself, your stress goes up as well. So yeah, like I guess you need to balance the this hand holding thing with then opening up. Like the tutorial opens up after like the first half, after a few turns, gives you access to more characters, like 3 characters, uh, and just tells you just go to the end of the level, and then it gives you some hints, like, all right, so this is the exit. You can open it with this thing or with this thing, and that's all. And you as a player can explore.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're learning how to ride a bicycle and as a child, and you have somebody who is like pushing you, and then they're no longer holding you, you know? Like these first couple of minutes are very directed, but then it's like still in the same environment that you will be in later on. Like it's not because your integrated tutorial you integrated tutorial to the first mission, so it's like seamlessly go through the you you already, it's not like, because I was thinking about the playground where it's like a separated thing, you can do all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of stuff, but then it's like you need to take out the player, put it into the proper level, and now the proper level starts. And the advantage of your tutorial is like, no, it's the same environment, this is will how exactly will it look like, and from the development you need to do one level, not two, for the tutorials. Okay, do we have anything else that we would like to cover from the design perspective before we move to other stuff?
The design perspective. Let's see.
Is there something that you'd like to discuss as well that we didn't touch?
Well, I could talk about the frustration. a lot. I mean, but I'm thinking. Yes, one thing related with the design. You mentioned about this, like this pop-up that is there at the very beginning, that this game is difficult. You're expected to die and repeat.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that it actually has two buttons, and one of the YouTubers actually pointed out that they're not sure why there are two buttons there. Like the first says "I understand," and the second says "I understand. Do not show it to me anymore." And it was like in both of them say that I do understand the text that you just shown me. Why would I like to see it again? I just want to click it, and forget about it. But yeah, maybe your spouse will be playing on the same account, so why not? I mean,
Okay.
okay, but like design wise, uh, uh, the game is difficult and you can die and repeat, but the repeating process is not amusing for everyone because Shardpunk is less forgiving. And that is because you have a one big single run from the beginning to the end, which is like a number of missions, like 15 or more missions. And this is something completely different. Like the structure of the game is completely different than, say, the Darkest Dungeon game, where you have the base thing, and then you have the smaller gameplay loops, which are like the single missions. But even if you lose a mission, even if your whole squad gets wiped out, you can still continue with the game. Like you have other people to that you can, like other soldiers, other people that you can recruit, and you can retry the same level. And this is not the case in Shardpunk. Sure, if you're not running Iron Man and you have the possibility to reload uh, the mission and try it again, that's something that you could do. But for instance, if you've picked a not uh, not let's say not an easy initial squad to play with, like because as I mentioned, some of the characters are easier to play than others. Then you might be stuck for the whole run with a very challenging game, and you can do nothing about it. And then if you die like 15 missions in and you don't have a save, you need to redo it all over again. Uh, well, this is how the game is structured, and this is how I wanted it to be structured. But it could be frustrating. Like again, so the gameplay loop in games like Darkest Dungeon is better. Mm, well, not maybe better isn't the best word, but it's more forgiving. Even if you die, you can like the game moves on. Uh, in here, it was not possible because of the whole structure of the game, that the vibe that you're just running away. There is no base, and you can do nothing about it.
This was the intentional decision from your end. Do you think now that for the future game, if you would be making a similar one, would you make it more forgiving in terms of like having such a sort of base where you can come back to, or the less forgiving aspect is something that stands out?
It will be more forgiving, that's for sure, because I guess I've evolved as a player as well. And as I am getting older, I tend to like the games with a friendlier, let's say, gameplay loop more. Uh, the the roguelite games in general are something that mm, I start liking more and more. I mean, I've liked the Darkest Dungeon for years, and if you look at it, it's basically having a roguelite loop, maybe in a slightly different way. But there's the core loop, which is the base management thing, and there's the smaller loops, which are the missions. So yeah, base management and missions that you can basically lose and still progress with the game would be a go-to if I would be making another game. Yeah.
Okay. So let's maybe step out from the design field and move a little bit into the art. You mentioned that you cooperated with a freelancer, collaborated on making the pixel art, and maybe we can discuss that. How did it looked like? Was it fun? Like how much of the vision, for example, you had to relay? Was it generally how did it look like? Never done that, and I'm quite interested, by the way, because like it's opening up from one person where everything is in your head to another person and trying to communicate a lot of these aspects that you kind of have this idealized version in your head might be also difficult.
The stuff is crazy. Uh, I believe that I mean I still remember it. Like the decision that I made to hire a freelancer was very tied to the decision that I wanted to actually try and develop and then release a commercial product, which is a game that I was making, which turned out to be Shardpunk. Uh, so I had no idea how to approach it. I knew what the style of the game should be. Like the visual style, I wanted to go with pixel art. I wanted to go with the low fidelity pixel art. Uh, so the things that I had in my head are, well, basically that's how the game looks like right now. So we managed to work it out pretty good. But I found I started searching for freelancers on the internet and was using one of the portals for the freelancers. I described the initial piece of work that I wanted them to create, like I guess two characters. One of them was like the rat character, and the other was a character that turned out later to be the Katana girl, which is still in the game. That was one of the first models that was present in the game. So I've described the job. I've set up a budget for it, and that's why it was this big of a decision, because that was the first time that I decided that I will be actually throwing money at the project. uh, Previously, I was only spending my time on it, and it's, even though they somehow translate, like they are connected. Because maybe if I wouldn't be working on a game, I could spend the time to, I don't know, make something that would make me more money. But from that moment in time, I was spending both money and time to make sure that I do something. So I've created this budget. I've created the job description, and some freelancers starting to reach out for me. Um, and I had no idea how expensive that would be, because I had no experience with that. And one of the freelancers from the US reached out, and I liked their work. Uh, and we
Was it too
we are.
expensive?
Uh, I mean, he asked me what was my budget on the thing. I was like, well, you know what the budget is, because it's there in the job description. He was like, oh, all right, well, so we'll just continue with that. So I've accepted the agreement. He accepted it on his end. It was, uh, and then he reached out to me on another communicator, not via the platform, but via Skype, I guess. He was like, just for the record, the budget that you stated for the work is only for the concept phase, and then if you want me to continue uh, on finishing the work that you described in the original job description, it would cost you at least 5 times more. I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm out of this deal, like right now. So uh, this was an obvious scam from my point, because the job description was there. Like I'm pretty good at describing things that I like to be done, and I was very close to actually stop working on the games at all.
Yeah.
But I decided to give it another try, and uh, yeah, then I found my future lead graphical designer, Kurt, who I'm working with until now. Mm, and yeah, I guess we found the perfect way of working and communicating with each other. So if I wanted something to be done, I would be first of all creating a description of what should be the end result. Like I need that many animations or something. Uh, I would have to describe the style of the thing, especially with the first models, because when we had the first models set up, then we knew how we should proceed.
Yeah.
And probably it's always a good thing to create some kind of a mood board, like some kind of a reference board for the person to be able to somehow see what's sitting in your head and what is your imagination of it. And then it's iteration. And the good thing about, like a great thing about Kurt is that he's very proactive as well. So he proposes his own ideas, and he finds some flaws in the things that I'm suggesting, even like technically about some alignments of sprites and stuff like that. So most of the time I was working with this single freelancer, but there are times when I was working with more, just to make sure that we keep up with the pace of the project.
Okay.
And I guess the good thing about pixel art, maybe that's true for other art styles as well, but probably especially with pixel art, it's easy to mimic the same style
Okay.
by different artists. So this like kind of scales, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe this is like my experience.
I think I might have asked you on our first initial conversation, but not on the podcast now. How much time the development of Shardpunk took, and how much time and effort took the art part?
Huh. I'm not sure whether I actually calculated this in any way. Uh, you're talking about the ratio for the
Yeah,
development and the.
this is what I'm interested in. Like how much like roughly speaking, very roughly speaking, in terms of like hours, not even like money, but like hours. How much time was put into the art, the visual representation of all the stuff, and how much compared to all the other parts like design, tech, and stuff like that.
Like the development time is what, 2.5 years of full time, maybe a little less, and then around 1 year and 8 months of after hours development that I was doing before I switched to full time. So it's like, I don't know, 3 years maybe of development
Yeah.
compared to um, when you're with freelancers, it's not like you have them full time all the time. So
Yeah.
you'd have to combine it. I'd say maybe half a year of
Okay.
full time graphical job.
Okay. I think
Just talking about the
yeah.
graphics.
I think it's a good ratio, very good ratio, very good result. If that's the case, something like 1/6 of the let's say development effort into visual, because like think I can come up with games that took like half and half
Mhm.
for the visual representation and for the development of other things as well. So maybe also that's pixel art style that is potentially, I'm not saying it's easy, but like it's less time consuming for to make stuff. Okay. Okay, and eventually, I understand that you're content and happy with the collaboration that you've done, and I know that you weren't turned off for good from the game development industry after the first unlucky interaction.
Yeah, I guess it's actually, I could say that me and Kurt are complementing each other quite nicely. Uh, I'm thinking that um, we can exchange information very effectively and bounce some ideas of each other. Uh, there was there was lots of iteration, of course, because it's still not the same as me working on all the stuff myself. but it was very effective. Like I can do pixel art, at least I thought so, until I saw how it is to work with an artist. Uh, but I'm pretty sure I if I would be doing everything myself, I would still not have the game finished by now, and
Yeah,
it would look far worse than
yeah,
what is that is looking.
yeah. Tell me a little bit more about sound design then. I think you also had freelance interactions, but ended up doing this on your own.
That is correct. I mean, I do remember working with a freelance sound designer who reached out to me the other day, uh, and we just couldn't make it work. Like the amount of going back and forth was just too much. Like I hadn't, if you have a sound, and let's say it's a sound of a shooting gun or whatever. Uh, First of all, you need to have the graphics ready. So that's that. Yeah, like you can't expect the sound designer to create a sound based off nothing or based on just your like explanation by words of how the weapon should sound like or what it should be looking like. No, you need to make sure that this is there. It's visual there. So then you send them the animation or the animations, and you make sure that obviously all the like we have directional animations like shooting up, down, to the side, and two diagonal ones like uh, diagonal to like the northeast and the southeast facing animations. They would all have to be synchronized so that the sound actually fits for all of them. Uh, and you can describe it for the sound designer on how it should sound like, and then it gets back to you, and you're like, the it's very it's extremely hard to provide, at least for me, to provide a valid like valid feedback. It's like the the best feedback I could come up with was like it does not sound good for me. Like maybe make it less metallic or whatever. So we couldn't make it work. But in the end, it turned out that I had this unhealthy, at least back then, I thought that it was unhealthy habit of hoarding and buying all the sound bundles from Humble. So I turned out with like lots and lots of gigabytes of different sound assets.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've decided to try mixing them on my own, and I was pretty happy with the results and the creation speed of those. Like because all the iteration was going on in my head,
Yes.
and even if in the development I decided that all right, now I see that I need to speed up this one animation of something which has a sound connected to it. The sound would have to be changed as well. It's not always as easy to just increase the pacing of the sound because then it starts to sound silly. So you need to redo it. Uh, so in the end, I was pretty happy how the sounds turned out, and pretty happy that I could do it myself. So a pro tip for everyone who uh, wants to try it out themselves, you can already start buying all the sound assets just to make sure that you have like 20 gigs of those.
Created the
Uh,
inventory.
yes. I mean, like searching from through them is a pain, and I still haven't found any effective way of doing it. I try to categorize them into different, just yeah, put them in different categories and renaming them and whatever. But in the end, it's like mm, I'm just I was just browsing through all of them, just hearing one by one, and then finding the ones that match. But I did receive positive feedback on the game sound feels like. So I'm happy, and probably I will continue doing this stuff myself.
With the music as well, have you done this yourself?
No, music. I guess that was like the one step too far. Would be like things that I'm not a composer. I guess I'm good at mixing stuff, but not like composing tracks. So I work with a freelance artist on this one. Uh, I guess I worked with two, but one of them I created the tracks for the initial demos, and then ghosted me. I have no idea what happened to them. They were from Scotland, and
Okay.
then I started working with the composer from Poland, with Michał, and my idea was to make sure that the music is dynamic in a way, but I didn't want to use any third-party libraries like WWise or Fmod, uh, and just I did it in code myself. So uh, when you traverse through when you go through the combat and more enemies appear, the music's intensity ramps up in a way that I'm adding another layer of music that is being played. So when we were creating the music tracks with Michał, uh, when he was delivering them to me, he split it into different layers. Like this kind of drums are in a separate one, the other kinds are in a separate file. Like the high strings are. This is like the part when I actually started. Uh, uh, Knowing more about the different types of instruments, like that you have the low strings and the high strings and stuff like the
Because you
electric
could hear them
thing.
separate, right? Like separately.
Yes, that's exactly the thing. And in the game, I was just I guess it was max 8 layers of music. It depended on the music track, and I was playing all of them at once, like synced, and I was just manipulating the volumes during the game.
Okay.
uh, and increasing them when necessary, or reducing them in some parts as well. I guess if you mm, manage to wipe the screen clean of any enemies, there will be obviously more coming, but then the music would be uh, uh, removing some of the layers just to make sure it's not that intense, and it turned out pretty well. So, but yeah. I I was thinking of maybe taking some lessons in composing or something, but I guess I already established that I'm not this kind of a single developer, like Lucas Pope or whatever, who's creating all the stuff by themselves. But I'm no, I know that I'm more specialized in just designing stuff, coding it, and maybe creating the sounds, but that's that.
Okay. And the game Shardpunk was created in Unity, right? Maybe can you tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about the choice of the engine, why Unity, what was good about Unity in terms of Shardpunk development, what maybe wasn't that good? How have you viewed this after the development, full like journey through Shardpunk development?
Unity was hands down the best tool, the best engine that I could use for the development of Shardpunk. I've chosen it mostly because I was able to continue working in the same programming language, which is C Sharp. I'm a software developer, and I was working with .NET previously. I was working on when I was working on the game part time. I was still using the same language, same features, and stuff, and learning Unity as I went through the development. Um, I'm not sure whether there weren't any alternatives, at least as I wasn't aware of any of those. and I didn't run into any major issues. Uh, I guess I didn't run into any issues at all. Um, there were no problems with me, not being able to do things that I wanted to do, because like the graphically, the game is not crazy about some 3D realistic graphical stuff. So there might be people that know that there are things that can only be done in, let's say, Unreal and cannot be done here. Uh, but that wasn't the case. Uh, I don't remember any issues with having to read through some Unity forums to make sure that I uh, work around an issue. I did find it amusing that Unity has a lot of features that sound maybe not abandoned but underdeveloped or something. When I learned about this different rendering pipelines and stuff, and I was like, so all right, so I'm using this one. I didn't even know that there were different ones, and now I want to introduce some basic shading, some emission maps to the game to make sure that some of the parts are more lit. Uh, I was like, okay, I have no idea what I should be using here, and or when I wanted to introduce the post processing thing, or like depending on the Unity version, there was the like different types of the post processing components I could be using, uh, and I was a little confused by that. But somehow I got it working, and when it was working, I was not touching it.
It's a
So
good,
so that's it.
it's a good strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That being said, I remember that when it was, I guess, already after Shardpunk was released, or maybe around the time it was released, there was this, this issues with Unity's pricing model, the
Price runtime
this
fee.
yeah, the runtime fee thing, exactly. And I started, and somewhere around that, like the latest version of Godot emerged. So I installed that and spent like 2 weeks on Godot to make sure whether it actually fits my needs. And I was able to recreate all the features that I would in Godot that would be required for me to create a game on the same technical level as Shardpunk. So like
So you did.
shader
So
wise,
it was a successful 2 weeks. Like you did
yes,
manage. Okay. Okay.
yes, that was a experiment that turned out to that it could be possible for me to switch to Godot if that would be required. Maybe not to rewrite Shardpunk, but
Oh
maybe
yeah.
to create another game. On the other hand, right now, I'm still not sure whether I'll be doing it. Like the biggest turnoff for me was the lack of in-game, like real-time view of the scene and the game screen in Godot. Like the game is running in the different window. It's not embedded in the editor, and you cannot like see the nodes
You kind of
clearly.
can, but it
Kind of, yeah.
will not be in the same place, and you need to
Yes.
look at them up and like retrace. Yeah, like Unity has this feature embedded from like I don't know when, like probably from the beginning, but this is the thing that you need to actively make. Like it's not happened by default, and I think maybe Godot maybe a little bit missed that. Maybe like there is this discrepancy. Have you used GDScript or C# when using Godot?
I was sticking with C Sharp, yes.
Okay, okay. Because by kind of default, it does GDScript. What steps have you needed to make to use C#?
I'm not sure whether I had to do something
So you
extraordinary.
just
Maybe
downloaded the engine, put it up, and then it.
yeah, I guess I'm not sure whether it was a separate download for that version or
Okay,
not. Maybe
okay.
that was the thing.
Maybe that was the case. Okay, okay. Uh, so let's close up with a little bit future aspects. Maybe what are your plans into the future after Shardpunk?
That's a good question. I would like to be creating games, and I hope that this will happen in the upcoming weeks or months. Uh, if not, I'm probably back to business IT. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed and doing all that I can uh, to push with the idea of creating the second game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In that case, is there any place on the internet where people can follow to know whether something will happen?
First of all, yeah, there's Twitter, which uh, I have a Twitter account that you can follow, and uh, there's a forum on the TIG source forums. Which I strongly recommend to all the game developers and game designers, the devlogs section of the TIG source forums, where there's a full dialogue of Shardpunk and lots of devlogs of other very, very interesting games. And if I would be creating a new project, I would be probably starting from that place and running my devlog from there, even before having a Steam page, because if it all works out, it's still a long way to go before the Steam page is up.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for the discussion then. It was a cool experience to learn a lot about Shardpunk design, in-depth mechanics, and also like how the game were actually made in terms of like your discussion, interaction with freelance people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to discuss these things. Like I've put so many hours and love into creating this game that I could talk about it forever.